What's up, my friend? Welcome back to another video. So today we are taking a quick look at Performance Sample's Solos of the C, both Solo Violin A and Solo Violin B. And I think it's really interesting when you take a look at the Performance Sample's website. It's very streamlined, it's very simple, and Jasper has a knack of sharing with his customers, with his audience, what he's actually working on. And he's very open with his process, so it's very transparent, which is kind of a rarity, I think, in the sample library world. So it adds a lot of insight into the way he's working, and it allows us to kind of appreciate the methodologies he's using at any given moment. So let's take a look at the Solo Violin A. I've always had my eye on this library because it always had a really sweet tone to me, and because I really like to write in more of a legato style anyway, I knew that this library would really serve well for my personal purposes, and I thought you guys might enjoy it as well. So big thanks to Jess for sending me a copy of the A and the B. We'll take a look at both of those libraries today. We'll compare them. We'll have a listen at the very end, maybe back and forth, and you can decide which one's the right for you. If you don't have either, or if you already have both, then maybe this will just reinforce how cool this library really is. So in case you're wondering about like the actual details of the library, it's actually pretty simple here. It's it says a very simple solo legato instrument. The library continues along the lines of the Konmodo series, and if you're not aware of Konmodo, it's basically a full ensemble string library with very smooth legato, rebosed transitions, and just a very detailed sound, very intimate but very warm at the same time. So solo strings are even more difficult because it's much more exposed, right? And the goal is to make it as seamless as possible without hearing that phasing, those transitions, fading between the sustains and the actual legato itself. But this gives you all the information, very, very standard. And Solo Violin B, let's take a quick look, is slightly different in that it explores a slightly more passionate sort of performance, whereas Solo Violin A is more of the MF to forte register. Solo Violin B goes into the FF dynamic, so more fortissimo, much more intense in a lot of the performances, and overall the sound is a little bit different as well, as you will hear. In terms of the actual sample sizes, they're pretty similar. They're both less than a gigabyte each, so very low processing power, very easy to store on your drives. And with that being said, let's kind of dive in and see what they look like. So this is the GUI, super, super simple again, as you can see. Let me just play a little bit of Solo Violin A so you can hear what this library is like, and then we'll dive into some of our thoughts. Here we go. All right, so out of the box, that's what we get. And it's I just love the lack of functionality here in terms of there's not very many knobs you have to tweak. It's just out of the box, you perform, you get the line that you want, you move on, right? Legato is super smooth. The sound is full. It's rich. It kind of fills in the stereo spread, which I really do like. So it really is meant kind of for the soloist purpose, which is really, really cool. Now you notice though that the vibrato itself comes in quite immediately. So this kind of leads me to believe that the instrument is kind of intended for more of a moderate paced passage. So naturally, yes, this instrument is meant for melodies, but not all melodies, right? Because some melodies will fit easier than others in the sense that if you have a really slow melody, then naturally the violinist will do more of a progressive vibrato. So it's not like immediate passionate vibrato in every single note, because that would kind of signify that the entire melody is much more intense. But if you want something more intimate and slow, then naturally you would want more of a progressive vibrato, like da, instead of da right off the bat, right? So this instrument itself has more of that immediate vibrato, which is not overbearing, by the way. It's done very nicely and very tastefully, so it can be used in a variety of situations. But in terms of the speed of the melody, I think it would be suited best for more of a moderate to maybe slightly faster sort of melody. So let me just play a little bit more, then we'll hear the differences between that and violin B. So I'm going to play violin A just a little bit more. Here we go. Right? So if you play fast enough, then you don't give the instrument enough time to start playing the vibrato, which is actually kind of nice in slightly faster passages. But if you hold the note for longer than half a second, that's when the vibrato starts to come in. So you just have to kind of be aware of your melody, your theme, and yeah, the vibrato is a little bit more on the immediate side, which is uncontrollable, by the way, because that's just baked into the performances. But it does suit the moderate tempo melodies a lot better. A quick thing to note here, if you press the sustain pedal down, then you can trigger a rebow on the note. I actually find the rebow in solo violin B more transparent and more effective, in my opinion, compared to violin A. That's just a personal preference. And the other thing is that there is one dynamic layer and one legato style throughout the instrument for both instruments, I believe. So that's just the way the performance is. You know, it's baked into the samples. That is made very, very clear on the sales page when you purchase it. So just be aware of that. It's just that one dynamic layer to kind of prevent any crossfading issues and phasing and stuff like that. So that being said, let's kind of hear solo violin B. This one is, again, more on the passionate side, lots of intensity, and again, one dynamic layer, all within the realm of the fortissimo register. So let's have a listen. All right, so first impressions, a lot more dynamic, right? In terms of the high dynamics, you can really hear the intensity of the instrument. It really has, it really sells that more emotional performance. In terms of like technical details, the sound is a little bit thinner, so I feel like the recording approach is probably a little bit different there in terms of the actual sound itself. But one thing also to note is that the legato transitions are a bit more slurred, so you are going to get some of those transitions bordering on portamento. And that's just, again, baked into the library. It's something that we get as a result of the patch. But that also means that you probably won't be able to play as fast. Not that you can't, but if you do, it might not be as convincing because those legato transitions will take a little bit more time. And so if you play super fast, then you're going to get a bunch of slides all over the place. And that's maybe not what you want in your legato line. So it might be nice to have a moderate speed melody again, but at a pace where the legato transitions feel natural, right? So you want to hold some of those longer sustained notes before you kind of transition too much to other notes, again, to de-emphasize a lot of those swells, right? Or those slurs, I should say. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. And again, here, actually, let me play the sustain pedal, repeat some of the notes so you can hear the rebow there as well. right? So the rebows are definitely more active and more intentional in this library compared to solo violin A, which I actually do really like in this library because it really feels like they're forcefully pulling the bow back down in the other direction, which is kind of cool. One little thing to note is that I feel like the transition from the legato, like the slur transition, to the regular sustain is a little bit more evident in this library, solo violin B, compared to solo violin A. In solo violin A, it's super, super seamless. Like I can't really tell where the legato transition sample ends and where the sustain begins. Whereas in this library, it's a little bit more evident. I think it's because of the actual performance itself. It's so passionate, and the legato transition itself and the sustain performance following it, they probably have so much more variance in them, the nuances there, that it's more difficult to kind of crossfade between them really seamlessly. But again, in a busier arrangement, I should say, in a less exposed context, it probably would be completely unnoticeable. And yeah, this type of library really sings on top of a busy or a passionate full arrangement really well, in my opinion. I can just envision hearing a big wall of sound, like lots of brass or strings or something like that, and then this library just soaring on the very top. And speaking of which, the ranges for these libraries are quite impressive as well. Solo violin B goes from the G, naturally the lowest note of the violin, below middle C, all the way up to this high E flat. So like E flat 6, right? Whereas solo violin A goes a tad higher than that. It actually goes all the way up to the G. So for solo violin A, you probably are completely covered in whatever range you want to have there. The fact that we can access that high G is amazing. So that's really cool. That's like 1, 2, 3. That's got a complete 4-octave range. For solos of violin B, it's a little bit less, but still, you do have quite a wide range there up to the E flat. But yeah, that's a quick comparison. Just to quickly recap here, solo violin A feels a little bit more neutral. The sound is a little bit wider, a little bit fuller, but it is not quite as passionate because it's more applicable for general purposes. And both libraries excel really well in the moderate to slightly faster range in terms of the melodic playing. Solo violin B a little bit less so because of the more accentuated slurred transitions. But solo violin B, again, is done really well in the upper dynamics, that true fortissimo dynamic that you don't really get in violin A. So you can always mix and match between them. The only thing I would caution is that solo violin B, again, sounds a little bit different in terms of mic positioning compared to violin A. So you might have to do some room stuff, like some reverb stuff, or fatten up the tone of solo violin B a little bit, or whatever you want to do to get it to really sing with violin A at the same time, if you wanted to do it that. But there we go. Really simple instruments, but really effective instruments in a very niche context from performance samples. This is the type of stuff that I personally really like. Simple patches that don't require much explanation. You literally just drag them in and play, and you get a great result off the bat. That's a philosophy I truly agree with. I'm not a tweaker. Like, I don't love tons of knobs and stuff. I get overwhelmed with that really easily. So these instruments, to me, are a breath of fresh air, and I really appreciate it. Again, of course, no libraries are without fault. I kind of already mentioned them here. But for what they are, I think Jasper did a phenomenal job. And yeah, I'm definitely excited to explore some of the other libraries coming up. So anyway, thank you so very much for watching. If you're interested in my total recommendation list for sample libraries, I would love to give you my sample library buyer's guide totally free. It's categorized by all the orchestral sections like strings, winds, brass, and percussion. I've listed all the prices, all the utilities of how I would use each library. So you can use it as a reference whenever you're on the market for a new library, or maybe you're just curious about my thoughts on a library you already have. You can just use it anytime as a buyer's guide, a downloadable PDF. Just click the first link in the box below and you can grab it absolutely free. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I'll catch you in the next video, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.